Hey guys, Grill Dash Catch here, and today we're going to be talking about the top 10 coolest Pokemon rivalries amongst Pokemon, starting with Seviper and Zangoose, the two Pokemon that inspired me to make this video. They both have a generation-long feud, with Seviper being a poisonous snake with a poisonous tail and scars all over its body that it uses to try to inflict poison into Zangoose, and Zangoose being a Pokemon that has sharp claws, and it fights off Zangoose using that, and it also has scars on its body. But the interesting part about this video is Survivor is actually based off of the Cobra, and Zangoose is based off of a mongoose. And in real life in Africa, they actually do have a feud where they are always fighting because Zangoose has the ability immunity in the game, which it's actually immune in person to the poison of the Cobra to a certain extent. And Survivor is a Cobra, which is poisonous, which makes sense why it has poison touch and uses that tail to try to beat Zangoose. So it's an interesting one because it goes from real life onto here, and it makes sense why this rivalry exists. The next rivalry is Cutiefly and Butterfree. They often get into skirmishes over food. Both are Pokemon that live in flower fields, and they go after pollen, which is why it would make sense why they get so territorial over food, and they have a rivalry. The next two Pokemon are Growlithe and Rockruff. Growlithe becomes close with the human trainers and has to protect them in the wild, and in the wild it actually has to protect over territory with Rockruff. This kind of makes sense because, as we know, James had a Growlithe named Growly, and Officer Jenny had a Growlithe, and they're both very loyal, just like dogs, to the human trainers that they're with, and it would make sense why they protect them. And in the wild, it would make sense why they fight with Rockruff, because they're like dog packs that would fight for certain territory. The next Pokemon on the list are Pinsir and Heracross, and they're rivals with Vikavolt. Although it was never said that Pinsir and Heracross had a rivalry in the past, it's kind of interpreted by the fact that in the descriptions it talks about how they both get into disputes with Vikavolt, and the reason that Pinsir gets into disputes with it is because of territory, but Heracross gets in disputes with it, and this is both in Alola, because Heracross is very proud of its horn, but it has this rival of Vikavolt, which also has a big horn, but it says that surprisingly they do not have a rivalry in between Pinsir and Heracross. Even though there was no previous Pokedex entries that talked about it, it kind of hints at it, which makes sense why they both don't like Vikavolt and Alola, but previously they could have not liked each other. The next two Pokemon are Corsola and Marnie. Marnie will go after Corsola's branches, and Corsola will drop them off as a diversion just to get away from Marnie, so it does not eat Corsola. But the thing is, Marnie only eats the branches of Corsola, so the fact that he drops them is just more of a distraction to get away and prevent from other danger. And the thing is, a lot of craftsmen actually do not like Marnie because they usually waited until Corsola would drop them off naturally, the horns of them, the branches of Corsola, I'm sorry, so that they can make something out of it, and they do not like Marnie for this reason, because Marnie eats these branches. The next two Pokemon are Carvanha and Basculin. Both are territorial strong jaw Pokemon, and they usually scare away all Pokemon when they enter a territory. Basculin, the only Pokemon that usually stays when Basculin shows up are Corphish and Crawdaunt, but the other Pokemon is Carvanha because they both are not scared of each other because they're both strong jaw Pokemon, and they both fight over food. The next Pokemon on the list are Passimian and Ambipom. Passimian they're both based off of ape Pokemon or monkey Pokemon, and Passimian, they can be in groups of more than 20, and they scavenge in trees for berries, and Ambipom fights them for comfortable trees because it's also a monkey Pokemon, and it fights for comfortable trees amongst with the Passimian that usually would inhabit these trees as well. The next two Pokemon are Lumineon and Lantern. Both look for food in the depths of the sea. They're both Pokemon that use light sources themselves, as they use their bodies as light sources in very, very deep waters, deep depths of the sea, on the sea floor, and they both are not scared of one another, and they fight over food. The next Pokemon and last Pokemon are Shinotic and Parasect. I'm sorry, not the last. Shinotic and Parasect is mostly controlled. Parasect is mostly controlled by the mushroom on its back and fights for territory along with Shinotic, and that makes sense because they're both mushroom fungus Pokemon. The last Pokemon are Durant and Heatmor. Heatmor breathes through its tail but uses its flame hot tongue to breathe fire down tunnels where Durant lives to try to melt them and then eat its insides. but Durant fights back by having steel armor to protect from heat more, and it makes colonies where each Durant has its own separate role to protect the entire colony from heat more. And this is an interesting rivalry as well because Heatmore is based off of an anteater, fire-breathing anteater, and Durant is based off of an ant colony. But in the Pokemon universe, they gave Durant steel armor while they gave Heatmore fire to make the stakes a little higher. Okay, guys, thanks for watching.